Dosto, good morning. It's a wonderful weather, and I'm sitting, or rather standing outside my villa. There's a sea all around, and I'm going to talk to you about Article 370 of the Constitution. But before I talk about Article 370, I want to give you some history of what really happened and how Kashmir had its present dynasty. In 1947, the ruler of Kashmir was a gentleman called Raja Hari Singh, and he was the grandson of the Prime Minister who served during the days when Ranjit Singh was the Maharaja of Punjab. But when the first Sikh war took place in 1845 and the second Sikh war took place in 1849, this Prime Minister of Kashmir was in league with the British, and he betrayed the Sikh cause, the Sikh armies. And sadly, Ranjit Singh, who was Sikh for the last 2 years of his life, was kept secluded from all people as this Prime Minister, this devious man, took over the government of the state, and at the same time had an understanding with the British that he would hand over Punjab to them, and in return they must give him a reward, and the reward he asked for was the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now that time the British Viceroy, I think it was Lord Dalhousie, had agreed to it, and the wars duly took place. I don't want to go into them in detail, but the Sikh army was betrayed at a number of places, and they lost the war. And Punjab was annexed by the British and became a British colony. At the same time, as part of the agreement, the state of Jammu and Kashmir was handed over to the Dogra dynasty, and they became the rulers. They called themselves the Maharajas of Jammu and Kashmir. They were actually yes men of the British and always said 3 bags full to the British. At that time, the dynasty, the Dogra dynasty, handed over Gilgit-Baltistan to the British on lease, and their governance was effectively confined only to the Kashmir Valley and parts of Ladakh. Ladakh, of course, was a neglected area. They weren't really bothered about it, and basically the developments of whatever was done was in Srinagar and Jammu. In 1947, the doctrine of lapse, as you know, took place, where the British left India and went away. And in the doctrine of lapse, it was decided that once British rule has lapsed, all the states will have to decide whether they join Pakistan or they join India. But there are 2 states in India. That one was Hyderabad, the other was Kashmir. They wanted to be independent. Hyderabad I'll discuss in a separate way. It was overthrown, the Nizam sent out, and thanks to Sardar Patel, it was taken over. But Maharaja Hari Singh, who was at that time the ruler of Kashmir, signed a standstill agreement with India and Pakistan, that where he said, we'll think over the proposals and then give you a decision a little later. In the meanwhile, status quo will continue. Pandit Nehru, who was the Indian Prime Minister, was a very naive person. I mean, I don't know that any other word to use for him. So this gentleman agreed, but Jammu and Kashmir. In the meanwhile, Panditji, as you all know, was a man without any strategic vision, and he committed a very big blunder. He approached the United Nations when the Indian army was pushing the raiders back, and he had no stomach for a long battle. Probably thought that I have taken Srinagar, bahut ho gaya, enough is enough. I didn't want to go forward, And a ceasefire was effected on the advice of the Security Council. A resolution was passed that there would be a plebiscite once normalcy was restored, and Panditji was quite happy. I think he was not really keen to take over Gilgit and Baltistan, which are pretty deserted areas, which is a very silly thing, because he gave away Ladakh in the same manner, Aksai Chin to China, thinking when he made a statement that not a blade of grass grows there. So you can imagine what sort of man he was. Anyway, he wanted that the separate identity of Kashmir to be maintained. Now, why should it be maintained? He has not justified it anywhere. With the result that those migrants who were coming from Punjab and from Sindh were not allowed to settle in Kashmir, and Kashmir remained isolated from the influx of refugees. And he was very clever, Panditji. He went to the United Nations, I think, sometime, and in his absence, a gentleman called Gopal Swami Iyengar, he brought in the resolution for a special Article 370 for Kashmir. Now, this was an article basically as per Nehru's whims, this was not required. Nehru was keen that a separate identity of Kashmir be kept. No other person from India should go to Kashmir to change the demographics of the region. And by and large, Kashmiris should be pampered and kept, happy. I mean, it's a very silly way to